Hello and welcome back. This is Saxon Math Lesson 45, dividing a decimal number by a whole number. Dividing a decimal number by a whole number is similar to dividing dollars and cents by a whole number. For example, $2.25 divided by 5, you can recognize that 5 will not go into 2, so it's 0 directly above the 2. The decimal comes directly up into the answer from this position, and then 22 divided by 5, the closest we can get is 4, which would be 20. Subtract that, you have a 2, which would make 25. Bring this 5 down. 25 divided by 5 is 45. It's going to be the exact same thing. Notice the decimal point is in the quotient is directly above the decimal point in the dividend. So for example, divide 4 and 2/10 divided by 3. The decimal comes straight up in the answer. And then you just pretend it's 42 divided by 3. 4 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract that, you get 1. Bring down the next number. 12 now divided by 3 is 4. And 4 times 3 is 12. There'll be nothing left over. So the decimal point in the quotient is always directly above the decimal point in the dividend. Just keep that in mind. Dividing a decimal number by a whole number. So again, here's another example. Dividing 24 hundredths divided by 3. Again, you just have the decimal come straight up in the answer. 0 divided by 3 is 0. 2 divided by 3 is also 0. You can't fit 3 into 2, so you just slide over, and now you have 24 divided by 3, which is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. Subtract it, and you end up with 0. So this would be 8/10. The decimal point in the quotient is always directly above the decimal point in the dividend. And then we fill in the empty place with zeros. Decimal division answers are not written with remainders. Instead, we attach zeros to the end of the dividend and continue dividing. So there's no remainder here. There's nothing left over, so there'd be nothing left. There'd be no remainder. There'd be nothing left to move forward either. Example 3, 6/10 divided by 5. So again, the decimal comes straight up in the answer. 0 divided by 5 is 0. 6 divided by 5 is 1. And 1 times 5 is 5. Subtract it, you get 1. Then you have to add another 0, and you bring that down. And now we have 10 divided by 5. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 2 times 5 is 10. And then we'd end up with 0 left over. Now that's where you're going to end up with the final answer, 12 hundredths. So the decimal point in the quotient is directly above the decimal point in the dividend as usual. To complete the division, we attach a 0 to 6/10. See, we had to attach that 0 to 6/10, making the equivalent decimal number of 60 hundredths. Then we can continue to divide. If we didn't attach the 0, we would have ended at 1/10, and 1/10 times 5 is not 6/10. So we already know from previous lessons that 6/10 and 60 hundredths are equivalent. All right, let's try these. Letter A. The distance from Margaret's house to school and back is 3 6/10 miles. How far does Margaret live from school? So the distance from Margaret's house to school and back, that means both directions. All right, go ahead and answer letter A. All right, you should have looked at that and recognized that it's 3 6/10 divided by 2 because it's from the house to school and then back again. So that's basically dividing this into two parts. one direction is going to school and one direction is going home from school. So you have 3 divided by 2, which is 1. 2 times 1 is that. Subtract it, bring this down. This would be 16 divided by 2. Remember, the decimal comes straight up in the answer. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. There's nothing left over. So the answer would be 1 8/10 miles from school is how far Margaret lives. Letter B, the perimeter of a square is 6 4/10 meters. How long is each side of the square? And how can you check that answer and see if it's reasonable? All right, so for letter B, if the perimeter of a square, so you got to consider it's a square, all sides are equal, and it's 6 4/10 all the way, like from this point all the way around and back to that point, is 6 4/10 meters. So that means we need to take 6 4/10 meters and divide it by 4 sides. That's how it would be, because it's a square, they're all equal in size. 6 divided by 4 is 1. 4 times 1 is 4. Subtract that, that'd be 2. Bring this down, this would be 4 right here. And then this decimal has to come straight up in the answer, right from the dividend. 24 divided by 4 now is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. There'd be nothing left over. So each one of the sides is 1 6/10 meters for each side. And how can you check that your answer is reasonable? You could multiply this 1 6/10 and multiply it times 4 to see if it equals this 6 4/10. So this would be 24. This would be 4 plus 2 makes 6, and then we'd count that, and it'd be 6 4/10 meters. So that is reasonable. Or you could add, if you wanted to do it the hard way, you could do 1.6 plus 1.6 plus 1.6 plus 1.6. And you'd still end up with 6 times 4, that'd be 24. And then this would be 2, 4, 6 there, and the decimal comes straight down in the answer. So yes, 1 6/10 is reasonable. All right, let's look at letter C, 4 5/10 divided by 3. Go. So for letter C, 4 5/10 divided by 3 looks like this. 3 will go into 4 one time. 3 times 1 is 3. Subtract that. This would be 15 now. And the decimal comes straight up in the answer, straight from the dividend. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So for letter C, you should have got 1 5/10. All right, go ahead and do letter D, 6/10 divided by 4. For letter D, this is 6/10 divided by 4. Decimal comes straight up in the answer. 0 divided by 4 is 0. 6 divided by 4 is 1. And this would be 4. We're not done here. This is 2. We have to add another 0 on here and bring that down to make this 20. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 5 times 4 is 20. Now we're done because this is 0. So this would be 15/100. Letter E, 14/100 divided by 2. So in this one, it's essentially like 14 divided by 2. You just have to have the decimal there. 0 divided by 2 would be 0. 1 divided by 2 would be 0. 14 divided by 2 would be 7. If we multiplied that, we'd end up with 14. There'd be nothing left over. 14/100 divided by 2 is 7/100. Letter F, 4/10 divided by 5. For this one, you'd have 4/10 inside here, that's the dividend, divided by 5. Has to be in that order. 0 divided by 5 would be 0. 4 divided by 5 would also be 0. Decimal would come straight up in the answer. We can't forget that. We have to add another 0 on here so this works, because 0 times would you just have to move it over. You need to keep moving. So now we have 40 divided by 5, which is 8. 8 times 5 is 40. Subtract that, there'd be nothing left over. So that means that 4 tenths divided by 5 is 8 hundredths. Letter G. 3 tenths divided by 4. 3 tenths divided by 4. If I'm going to rewrite it on my paper, I would do that. Decimal comes straight up in the answer. This would be 0. This is also 0. 4 doesn't fit into 3, so I have to add another 0 here. Maybe extend this out a little bit. Now I have 30 divided by 4. The closest I can get to that is 28. So I'm going to subtract that. I need to add another 0 here. And I'm going to bring that one down. 20 divided by 4 is 5. And 5 times 4 is 20. So then I'd have nothing left over. So the answer to this one is going to be 75 thousandths for letter G. All right, do letter H. 12 thousandths divided by 6. For letter H, I'd have 12 thousandths inside the dividend space divided by 6. The divisor's out there. Decimal comes straight up in the answer. 0 divided by 6 is 0. 0 divided by 6 is 0. 1 divided by 6 is 0. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Because 6 times 2 is 12, and there'd be nothing left over. So that means that 12 thousandths divided by 6 equals 2 thousandths. All right, do letter I. For letter I, you have 1 4 tenths divided by 10. You can see that I'm going to add some zeros. I'm just going to add a couple zeros just for good measure. And then I have the decimal straight up in the answer. 10 will not go into 1. 10 will go into 14. It'll go in there one time. 1 times 10 is 10. 10 subtracted from 14 makes 4. Bring down the 0. 40 divided by 10 is 4. 4 times 10 is 40. And there's nothing left over. So now I know this is going to be the final answer. I didn't actually have to use that 0. That's okay though. Still an equivalent. Remember, it's an equivalent number. 1 4 tenths is the same as 1 40 hundredths. It's the same as 1 400 thousandths. So the answer to this is simply 14 hundredths. In the future lesson, we're going to learn that all we need to do when dividing by 10 is move the decimal place one place to the left. And look at what happened there. We just moved the decimal place one place to the left. Letter J. Let me put letter J over here for you guys. So if you have 7 tenths divided by 5, decimal comes straight up in the answer. 0 divided by 5 is 0. 7 divided by 5 is 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Subtract that, this would be 2. I need to add another 0 to bring it down here because it's now 20 divided by 5, and that's going to be 4. 4 times 5 is 20, and there's nothing left over. J would be equivalent to 14 hundredths. And letter K. 1 tenth divided by 4. That looks like this. 1 tenth divided by 4. I'm just going to extend this out and add that for good measure. I might need to add another one, but let's check it out. So for letter K, I have 0 divided by 4 is 0. Decimal comes straight up in the answer. 1 divided by 4 is 0. 10 divided by 4 would be 2. 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract that would be 2. I need to add another 0. I'm going to throw that down there. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 5 times 4 is 20. And there's nothing left over. So letter K equals 25 thousandths for the answer. All right, nice job. If you don't understand what we just did, go back through and listen to the lesson, rewind, replay, and we'll see you tomorrow